Have we got any apologies?
Chairman, we're missing Councillor Prentice, who I'll assume is an apology this morning, unless he comes in later. 10 members present at the start.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No. Can we move on then to the minute of the meeting of the 23rd of September? Members, you happy with the minute? Okay, agreed. Thank you. Okay, the first item then on the agenda for this morning is the Corporate Risk Register update for 2014-15. But before we move into this, I would just like to put on record my thanks to the committee members, in particular for Councillor Drybrough, who's kept the committee going for the past few months. So I would just like to put on record my thanks to all committee members for moving the committee forward. Thank you. Okay. Can we have a report on this, please? Who's taking us through this? And my record that says the Assistant Chief Exec or Richard?
I'm looking for it.
Does anybody know if Richard Fox is in the building? If you could just bear with us for a minute or two, members, while we see if we've got an officer able to take us through the report. Yeah. Maybe they're watching us from the other room, Davy. Good morning. Okay. We're actually waiting for you this morning, so if you're ready, if you could take us through the report, please.
This is an update on the Corporate Risk Register. It's an annual process. The register this year has been developed after quite wide consultation through the Corporate Business Support Group, CMT, and senior officers. You'll note that a couple of the risks are still to be developed in some form, and I understand it's going to be a standing item on the agenda of CMT from now on. But if there's any questions with the paper or any of the risks, I'm very happy to take them.
Thank you. Members? Councillor McKee?
I've already had a rant this morning with my colleagues, and I'll just start again, I think. Reading these papers, I'm quite concerned at what's happening in the council. The situation we're in, people are moving on for one reason or another. Are we giving proper training to the replacement? When you read through the papers, there's lots of issues that are happening that personally I don't think should be happening because they're common sense. And basically I'm asking the question, are we training the people who are being promoted into these posts? But the one that I was wanting to raise mostly was reference number 1, not achieving the overall improvement required in child protection. I don't know how many of you watched that programme the other night on Baby P, and there was a reporter who continued investigations after the process was closed down. But when he seen the process was closed down, it was social work that paid the price. But according to this reporter, the papers from health and police were scathing as well, but they were never made public. I would hope that we must show that we are behind social work and what they're trying to do and give them all the support we possibly can. But we've got to ensure that other sector providers, like police, health and whoever else are involved, are playing their part as well It's dead easy. You switch the television on or the radio on to the news, or something happened to a child. First people that's blamed are social work. There's no mention of the police, health, even close family. They're not involved either. And they all have a part to play. And as I say, it's dead easy to blame social work. And I would hope that we can emphasise at the meetings with the other partners that we are looking for them to play their part and ensure that whatever part they promise to play or they should be playing is recorded, and they are doing what they say they're going to do and what they should be doing.
Councillor McKay, I take it from that we're talking about cross-partnership working. Could we have some comments on that, please?
I also have heard commentary about that TV programme that you referred to, Baby P. And one of the things that was emphasised that there were 3 people responsible for the death of Baby P. And they were not actually the social work. They were actually the mother and I believe a boyfriend and a partner. These things are very, very complex issues. And partnership working is essential to maintenance of child protection. And I think that was made very clear through the care inspector report about the importance of partnership working between ourselves, health and police in all these issues. Point with all child protection is that we, as a council and the police and NHS, can only ever reduce the risk of these things happening. We can never eliminate it. What we can do is try and think about things which can contribute to that risk and try and act in a way to try and avoid it happening if we can. And I absolutely agree with the members' comments that it would be wrong to ever emphasise purely the role of social work or purely the role of the NHS in these things. It is about all the agencies working together to protect children in this area.
That's right, and I think it's got to be emphasised to all the agencies involved. This is what we're trying to do. I know we've got a Child Protection Committee. This is what we're trying to do, and we want to be sure that you are playing your part as well. And if you don't play your part, then it must be made public as well. Then you just hide behind social work all the time.
Councillor McKay, you brought it up specifically under item number 1. Do you want to suggest that there's anything else added into the existing action plan? I mean, obviously it says a risk register for the action plan has been developed and is reported to the Chief Officers Group. I would want to ask a question about whether or not that goes to social work services as well.
Well, that is another issue that I feel, and there's not just social work, but I feel there's many committees we're not getting information that we should be getting at times. But I would hope that we are involved in this, and I would hope members agree to get involved in this, because at the end of the day, we are a corporate parent. We all have responsibilities. But there are issues with education and other departments as well, where they have responsibilities now that they don't necessarily know about, and we've got to ensure that they do know, and they know what they're supposed to be doing. So I think it's important that we get fed back, probably to here as well as to social work and education.
Okay, thank you. We'll make a note of those comments. Councillor Bell, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually in reference 8, the Council failing to deliver a major project on time within budget. Obviously, members all know about the Burns statute, the Burns the area in Dumfries. There was a delay on that capital project. Obviously, this has been discussed at Scrutiny Committee and whatnot, and the role on this one. I've got concerns about this. I'm just wondering what this new administration will do and take steps forward that a project like this is not going to happen again. If you're taking, for example, the private sector, they seem to deliver projects on time and whatnot, but it seems to be public sector seems to be lagging behind. I just wonder what steps we would taken to show for a project, a major project like this, is going to be delivered on time within budget. I just wonder if you could explain these points.
Can you give an explanation to Councillor Bell, please?
The risk reflects the fact that with any major project, and I can think of several, not just the Burns statute that's been going on, we have Dumfries Learning Town, we have obviously DG1 outside, we have Dalbeaton New Schools. All these are very major projects which need very good project management in place. There is a role, certainly by officers, to have good project management to minimise the risk, but there's also a role of members in here to receive, for the relevant council committee to receive proper reports and scrutinise those, and to help ensure these mistakes don't happen. I think with any major project, there is always going to be some level of risk, which is why it's on the risk register. And it does reflect badly on the council when these things go wrong. I agree with you. But I can't, I'm afraid, give you any more detailed assurance.
Okay. Thank
Chair,
you
I'll
for
come-
that.
I'll
Just
come-
hang on a second, Councillor Bell. I do understand that a paper did go to the scrutiny committee. I sit on that committee, and I know a paper went to that committee regarding this particular subject. Councillor Bell, do you want to come back?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Obviously, we're looking for robust mechanisms in the future, and obviously elected member engagement within the area. These things need to be tightened up and that, because you look at private projects across Scotland and whatnot, they seem to have robust mechanisms. It always seems to be the council, the public sector, the NHS seems to be lagging behind. We really need to get into the Premier Division, not the Third Division.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Bell. I do understand that the Service Committee did send that report to the Scrutiny and Performance Committee, and it has been scrutinised there, and there will be a report coming back on that. Okay, thank you. Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, you asked the question, is there anything we can do? For me, there is insufficient information in this report, right down to the way it is laid out. And to build on what Jock was saying, he was talking in terms of item 1, but if you take item 1, 2, 3, 4, then there's a correlation between them all. In item 1, there's a serious risk of something happening to a child, and what we've got at the end of that, and I would not disagree with any of the 1 to 9 issues, but it's the information to allow the Audit Committee, not just the Service Committee, but the Audit Committee, to scrutinise the action plan, to monitor whether progress is being made in terms of a child or children at risk. In item 1 and item 2, just exactly where GARFEC is at, given that there has been a person put in post to monitor and develop GARFEC, notwithstanding that at that time it was in the early stage. At what stage is it now at in terms of the existing action? Because there's nothing here that tells us where it is at in terms of GARFEC. So on the first one, it's to me, it's the action plan that is required to ensure that we as an audit committee can scrutinise the action plan, and that we are monitoring indeed the development and progress of that action plan. And there's nothing here in this report that moves me towards that, yes, we are making steps forward. Similar to the point being made in item 8. In items 1, 2, 3 and 4, I have continually asked about a report, because I believe that there is a risk out there, particularly in social work, in terms of we've had reports on absenteeism and the number of people who are off on stress and whatever. But I've never seen a report that comes back and says what the impact on those that are left in post to pick up the work of those that are off sick, and just how they are coping, which impacts on 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it's the lack of information, Chair. And to finish, when I look, and reference has been made to health, in terms of GARFEC, my experience of it is that health is a way out here somewhere, and social work and education are trying to manage GARFEC, where we're not getting the true participation from health. Nothing again in the report that says, how are we working together between health, education and social work that's got a responsibility to deliver GARFEC and to make sure, notwithstanding we're in the early stages, that we are delivering on it.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Obviously, this is the corporate risk register, and I'm going to ask Mr Crichton to give you an answer to that question.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to confirm, certainly, that as I understand it, members get a fortnightly update on integrated children's services from the Director of Education and his staff. Going forward, there will be a revisit to the Council in December from the external inspection agencies. Following on from that, to ensure all members have the opportunity to input onto the implementation of the improvement plan, there will be a report to full Council in the new year in relation to integrated children's services and GIRFIC. So the point's well made. That will draw out the partnership emphasis that's placed on integrated children's services, and certainly can confirm that that will be brought to full Council. In terms of the issues that have been raised in terms of the staff management, members will appreciate only too well the budget challenge we faced and continue to face, and will be aware that the Chief Executive has agreement from members to the outline of a reshaping of the Council, and again, that's subject to a report to full Council in December. Finally, members should be aware Policy and Resources Committee acknowledged the very issues of staff absence, potential stress within the organisation, and all service committees are due to receive reports on the issues of stress within the organisation, and that works in hand. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Scobie, would you like to come back?
Yes, Chair, I'm grateful for the answer being given by Derek. In my opinion, it should be in the report, not a verbal, and there should be an extra box here in terms of looking at the action plan, and if it's reported to, as is said in many of the actions, the risks identified, that it's reported to corporate management team. What is reported to corporate management team should also be reported to us as the Audit Committee, so that we're able to scrutinise and monitor the progress. That's what I'm saying. So grateful for the explanation and clarification being given by Derek, but it should be in here so that we can see the progress that's being made. We can see that there is an action being taken on whatever it is that requires that action being taken. Unless someone can point me to it, I don't see it in the report. I see that there's something there that's reported to a corporate management team, but what is it?
Councillor Scobie, I think your points are well made, and I would suggest that we maybe have an additional column in this report in the future, which is progress update. And I think it's important that we actually have that. Members, are you happy with that? Thank you. I've got 3 speakers left. Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Collins, and then Councillor Geddes.
The points I was about to raise have actually been covered by Councillor Scobie and Mr Crichton's response.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Most of the points I'm speaking to have been touched on by all the members, but I have particular concerns around how we are achieving the outcomes in terms of partnership working, whether it be private organisations, third sector organisations, how those contracts are procured and how they are tracked, and whether or not they are meeting the expectation of the contract, or it's just more of the same. I've got huge concerns also around April 5th, next year, and how much is going to happen on April of next year. I just hope it's not on the 1st. The fact of the matter is that we're not kept up to date. We're not keeping our employees up to date. We are not consistent in the way that we consult with the community. I have long advocated a single port of call within the council for guidance to be given insofar as community consultation is concerned, and a lot of reputational damage has been inflicted on this council as a result of that very failure or perception of. Very much I'm in tune with what Councillor McKee was saying earlier with regard to social work being the scapegoat. If we're not tracking contracts properly as a council, and the various departments of the council to ensure that we are having delivered the services that we are paying for, then again we expose ourselves to huge reputational damage or worse. Overall, I believe the practices are not sufficiently tight enough within this council and its various departments, ensuring that the work is properly carried out and that this council is not only saying what it does, but doing what it says. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. I think that it would be very valuable if this committee got an update on this corporate risk register in, for example, 3 or 4 months' time, so we knew exactly where we were, what the changes have been, what the updates are and what the progress is. I think that hopefully will help to allow our committee to see what progress has actually been made and whether or not we need to take any further action. Are members happy with that? Okay. Thank you. I don't think you had a specific question to be answered there, Councillor Collins. Are you happy with that? Yes? Okay. Councillor Geddes?
Well, a significant number of the issues that I would wish to have raised, have already been dealt with. I will not apologise for rehearsing some of them, and particularly in the context of Box 7. We were talking there about a significant service failure within the council. Well, I'm not quite sure about the preciseness of that language, Chair, because at the end of the day, you can argue that that's already, there's a big overlap between that and certain other boxes. But the thing that, that strikes me in all of this is in fact the role that's being ascribed to such as the corporate management team and the lack of an appreciable role that's being ascribed to elected members. Now, to me, one of the fundamental issues implicit in this report is the role of elected members, and particularly the role of elected members in this committee. I am not, let me repeat, not any desire, as it were, I have no particular desire to pour over the entrails of operational issues. That's not my function, it's not my role, and it's not my remit. But equally, I think there's a mindset in this council that the 47 elected members, are little more than ciphers when it suits. In other words, you're brought up here and you're expected to rubber stamp stuff, without in fact being given the opportunity, as it were, to be properly involved in your role as an elected member. And I know that these comments resonate, albeit on an informal basis, with a significant number of our peer group, Chair. And I think that this is an issue which has got to be addressed, particularly the function and the role and the remit of this committee. I wouldn't be disrespectful and say that this committee exists in limbo, but at the end of the day, it does not really have the function and role, as far as I'm concerned, that an audit and risk management committee should have. And we'll be coming later on in the agenda, Chair, to deal with certain issues. There will obviously have to be short-term responses given in relation to these, but I would like to revisit at that time the need for a fundamental review of the function and role of this committee and where this committee should report to, with a view to giving it as much clout as it really should have. And indeed, let me also say, its relationship with Scrutiny and Performance Committee, because that's an issue which has been discussed, albeit in a somewhat desultory fashion, as it were, over the years. So it's about time, perhaps, in fact, that we've got all of these issues clarified and driven forward. And we'll finish up, particularly, it's opportune if we're now talking about a further review of the organisational structure which we sanction. So, you've got to make sure, in fact, that not only is the organisational structure fit for purpose in these increasingly challenging times, but at the end of the day, the committee structure and elected members' backup and involvement is also fit for purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Geddes. We will cover these points under item 8 on the agenda, but thank you for raising them. Members, Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, it's just in response to the point being made by Alistair, particularly to item 5 in terms of the role of the elected member. And on this one, this talks about requests for information, the loss of trust and confidence in the council, and the increase of service users, if you like, the public asking for this information. For me, I think that this committee, and indeed the 47 members, need it spelled out to officials of the council, from the highest to the very lowest, as to our role as elected members and our entitlement under the Act, and it has gone through Parliament, led by Robin Cook, that we have got a right to information if requested on the basis of, or that we can demonstrate the need. And that is not always pertinent or coming through as elected members. And in this respect, it's down here as moderate. To me, it's a high risk, of people not receiving the information, coming to the elected member, then the elected member being blocked in so much as they can't share. So to me, Chair, there are big issues in terms of what the role of the elected member actually is, and for that to be totally clarified in every department, that we have a right to information on the basis that we can demonstrate a need to fulfil our role as elected members.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. As I've said already, we will look at the roles and remits of this committee under item 8. So can we move to the oh, sorry, Councillor Driver.
So thanks very much, Chair. I mean, I'm sure that members will remember way back getting a report from the Health and Safety Department within the Council in regards members' responsibilities under the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, and that these were further improved over the last couple of years as to what members have to do. And I have to agree with what members have said. We need the information to make the decisions on how we actually move forward with the risk register. And there are many risks within the council, and again, agreeing with Alistair, there are operational risks that need to be managed by the different departments within the council, need to be managed quite clearly. But we as members, and I have to say that most of the members that I have talked to want to take that responsibility and take it forward through all the committees, not just the Audit and Risk Committee. All committees have got responsibility to scrutinise reports that are in front of them. But as has been said before, we need the information to do that. And I think the suggestion to improve the business risk register, having that extra box to say what's actually being done, is a good way forward. I think also that when we come to committee, not just this committee, but every other committee, we need to hear perhaps a little bit more from officers who are delivering the report in their opinion of what the risks are and what's actually being done. So it's not left up to governance to come along and say what's actually been done at these committees. So I think your suggestion of adding that particular box in at the end is a good one.
Thank you. Okay, can we move to the recommendations, please? So 2.1, happy to note. And 2.2, agree the annual process to update the corporate risk register and the related reporting arrangements, contribute to the assurance that the Council's risk management arrangements are effective. Now, we have some points that we want to add in here. So, can you take us?
You've agreed to, you want an additional column in the future updates in respect of progress, and you're looking for an update in 3 and 4 months' time in that respect.
Yes, I would like to see an update back at this committee by March, I would say. Members, are you happy with that? Okay. Thank you. Can we move on then to item number 5? This is the internal audit report issued, and I believe Kevin is going to take us through this report. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members should all have received, as you know, the system is we send you the reports under separate cover. So all members hopefully have received 3 reports this time. Creditor systems follow-up. This was a report that was kind of requested by external audit, but we had concerns about the previous year's work, about the payable systems and so on. So we were pleased to be able to take their recommendation forward. So this is a report of follow-up work on that. The second one is in connection with Framework I. This was a breakout sort of extension work that we did to make sure that Framework I payment processes. The big change has been, in the old days, all payments passed through virtually the hands of the Director of Finance. They don't anymore. A lot of payments are originated within management information systems that sit in departments. Now, eventually, the payment file is passed to finance and it progresses it. It does some checks on it and progresses it through to payment. But the payments, in effect, are being originated now within services. So it's important that something like Framework I is set up correctly, has appropriate controls and so on in place. So that's what that's about. And then we do an annual report on the LEADER program as part of their funding requirement. A report from internal audit is expected, and we've been doing this for a number of years. So that's what that report's about. Is in effect it's their annual report for their funding purposes, but also has aspects of interest in it, usually that members express interest in. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. I think we'll take them individually one by one, if that's okay with members. So the first one's the main financial systems, creditor system follow-up. Obviously, if we look at page 2, the ranking in particular, the second box down, which number has a ranking of 1. I mean, obviously that is a big issue, and I would just like some comments on that. And then if members would like to ask anything else, then please let me know.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that recommendation, it really follows from the previous work we did where we were looking at Milan. Some errors, some technical errors were found in Milan payments. What we were doing previously was using external audit's assessment grid, which is a little bit mechanical. So there was some small degree of interpretation required, but even so, we found there were some issues associated with Milan, principally around, we're concerned about separation of duties in their process. So as I said, Milan is one of those payments where, or systems where payments are originated locally and then passed through to finance for payment. So we had been given an undertaking that it would be looked at, and when we came to do, in effect, the follow-up, we discovered it hadn't been partly connected, I believe, with, excuse me, the retirement of a senior member of staff who wasn't around anymore to ask what had happened. So the Senior Manager of Property and Architectural Services, I have every confidence that she understands the issue and that she is taking it forward. We've given it a Category 1 primarily because, if you like, nothing happened previously. So we want to make sure that this one is given appropriate attention. But I am very confident about that that will be looked at.
Thank you. Before I open it up to members, I just do think it's important that people understand that that's actually not good enough. If something is supposed to happen from an internal audit point of view, and there is a risk there because it's not happening, departments need to know that you're not asking for something if it's not necessary. So I do think we need to send a message back to say that if internal auditors are asking for something, and if it is a risk, then it's not good enough just to ignore it. I understand that things will be moving forward now, but I just think it's important that that isn't. Is it on the same point, Councillor Geddes? Right, I'll let you in because I've got some other speakers, but if it's on the same point.
It's very much the same point, Chair. I couldn't agree more with you, and I'm not suggesting for one moment that we'll look out the penitent stools. But at the end of the day, I think, if needs must, we should be asking the departmental representatives who have not implemented the recommendations to come along to this committee and to explain why they haven't done so.
Thank you, Councillor Geddes. Councillor Gilroy, the same point? No, well, could you just hang fire then, Councillor McKee?
Yeah, I think it's hitting on what we raised earlier, the state training. There's a bit in here where it says about framework I, they can go into SharePoint and find out information. But people are not doing that. They've got to be properly trained. There's an instance in here where about a dozen people started. Half of them have been trained, the other half haven't. And half of the ones that hadn't been
Councillor
trained
McKee,
now.
sorry, can I just interrupt? Councillor McKee, we're taking them in order, so I'm
doing... It's just, Chair, sorry to interrupt you here, but it's just the principle of training. Are we training our people properly? And reading all these papers.
Okay, but are you talking about Framework I, Councillor McKee?
No, I'll talk about a lot of them if you like.
Well, we're taking, we did say at the beginning, Councillor McKee, just a second, I did say at the beginning that we're going to take them in order. So the one we're discussing at the moment is the main financial systems. So if that's the one you wish to talk about, then carry on. Otherwise, could I just let the other members in and then you can come back in?
it's just the principle of training, Chair. That's what I'm on about, and it refers to everybody. Are we training our staff properly? Has it been reviewed properly in a regular period? Thank you very much.
You're pushing it, Councillor McKee, but I'll let you away with that. Could you give him a response, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, modern approaches are to do training in different ways. And particularly when you introduce a new system and you have a very large number of users, go back to the old days when you'd have 20 bean counters in a central room who'd be responsible for everything. It doesn't work like that anymore. You could be looking at 150, 200 users for a new system. What we do is when we're auditing a new system, one that's come in, we do include training, guidance, those sorts of points as part of the challenge. It is part of the control objectives that adequate training was given and that is proven to have been given. We sometimes actually approach people who have been trained and ask them what they think of the training, whether it was effective or not. But we must recognize that the days of being able to take people away from the office and train them for a day are gone. We can't afford to do that anymore. So a lot of training now takes place through online modules or through them having hands-on training by the supervisor at their desk, these sorts of things. So the approaches to training have changed, and we need to recognize that. But in the main, we do assess the adequacy of training as part of, usually when we're looking at a new system. So it's often in there. You'll find that for some of our reports, it's one of the challenges that we face. It's hard to say, you know, are people trained adequately? Training is kind of one of those bottomless pits. You could keep training and keep training and keep training people and not necessarily get an outcome. People have to do a job, and they have to have the skills and the ability to do that job. And it is in one of our financial codes, it says very, very clearly that people may not be given financial administration work to do who are not equipped or capable of doing it. In other words, you can't say, oh, it's the girl in the office's fault. If you know, it really isn't. It's the manager's fault if something goes wrong, okay? So training and so on has changed a lot, and it doesn't take place the way it used to, but it is taking place, and in particular with new systems. And in some cases, we also do catch-up training. When Integra was introduced, there were some complaints about the adequacy of training for those who got very informal training, and so they did a sweep up. In effect, they went round everybody again and said, what is it you'd like to be trained on? What is it you feel you don't have to allow you to do your job? And they scooped all that up and worked out a revised training program for them. So it is a focus for most managers, largely around when new systems come in. It is fair to say that older systems tends to be on the job or desk training, and perhaps that's where the sort of the effectiveness of training begins to fade away.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy?
Thank you. I've just got two questions. It's to do with documents at 5.1.2 and 5.1.4, where there's meant to have been two documents finalised, one by the 31st of March and one by the 31st of August. I just would like reassurance that those have been done. And the other thing is, I just wonder what is happening in architectural services, because this seems to be where the problem has occurred with regards to accidental error, and it says at 5.23 that the response was made by the architectural manager at the time, who has subsequently retired. And I just wonder what or who is in place now to deal with these things.
Thank you. I think you've probably partially answered one of the questions, but if you could just reiterate, please. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I haven't done the follow-up on this work. So in respect to 5.1.2 and 5.1.4, I would say the answer is yes, it's very probably done, but the follow-up will be done on this shortly. So we'll get confirmation of that. I haven't had personally confirmation that 5.1.2 and 5.1.4 have both been dealt with. In terms of architectural services, members will be well aware that there were significant changes in that service. And the new manager, I have every confidence in. I have quite a lot of contact with her, and I know that she takes audit reports seriously, and she's very concerned for a number of reasons to improve effectiveness in that department. So I'm pretty confident. We'll be back to her just after Christmas to check the position, and we'll give you an update report probably at the next, at the February committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Geddes?
With your leave, Chair, it's very much on this point, and it goes back to the discussion that we had in the preceding item on the agenda. We hear Mr. Garrity say, in fact, that he's been in contact and that he's satisfied progress being made. Now, these are operational issues, and I accept entirely, his operational locus in his role. But given the challenges, and it's common knowledge, the challenges faced by certain departments in this authority, given that that is one of those, and we've heard it, from the internal auditor a couple of minutes ago, surely there should be some form of arrangement put in place whereby the relevant elected members, in fact, are getting these briefings, etc., as well, and are satisfied that indeed, and have evidence to prove that what Mr. Garrity has just said is indeed the case without being disrespectful to him. I am under no circumstances doubting his or indeed Ms. Matheson's or anyone else's professional integrity. But the point I'm making is that there is a locus and a role here, and I would have thought in these circumstances, the relevant elected members concerned should in fact be aware and be reported to regularly on these points.
Thank you, Councillor Geddes. Can I just ask if that is updated to the Service Committee?
No, Chair. Service committees don't receive audit reports, and it's fair to say, unless members are serving on this committee, they're often not aware of these things. They are, they are operational. They are for management to deal with. It's my job to make sure that the audit points we've put to them and the improvements we've asked for are either delivered or it's reported into this committee that they haven't done it. And our recommendations tracking report, that's what that is delivering. And yes, in the past, there was a reference previously by Councillor Geddes to actually bringing officers from the service involved to this committee to explain what happens when recommendations are delayed. That was what we used to do. We had a rule that said if 3 months, you get an automatic 3-month, where you can have a 3-month extension, but anything beyond a 3-month extension involves coming back to the committee and explaining what's going on. Previously, the committee has asked, across the piece, looking at how the committee has operated over a number of years, I tend to find, and this is not a criticism, it's just an observation, I tend to find that when the report is presented as it is here, there is slightly less engagement, or historically there's been slightly less engagement by members with the issues. When you tend to take much more interest is when the recommendations tracking reports are coming through and you're seeing what's happening. That's often when you ask some very specific questions. Now, you've asked previously about what are the options for bringing officers to this committee. For instance, should they come when the report is first presented, or should they come when the report, all the actions are done, and they can then say, yes, it was a good audit, or yes, we found it useful, or yes, we had these delays for these reasons? Or do you just rely on what we do, which is professionally we have to ensure that we follow our recommendations and be satisfied with them, and if we're not satisfied, our obligation is to report that back to you. So that if you like, those are your options you've got on how you could do this.
Can I just ask one other question then? If the audit committee had concerns, as we have indicated this morning, and these audit reports don't go to service committees in any shape or form, would it be appropriate then for this audit committee to raise a concern with the service committee?
I think, Chair, at the end of the agenda, we're coming to a very interesting report, which is about audit committee function and how it should operate. Not anticipating that discussion, but that document points out that the role of the audit committee is advisory to those charged with governance. And in the case of service committees, you can argue that they are charged with the governance of that particular service. And what we don't have is a line of communication between the Audit and Risk Management Committee and the Service Committee. And that there isn't, if you like, a mechanism that I can see that allows that to be done easily. It would be possible, I think, for an Audit Committee decision to be along the lines of report a concern to Social Work Services Committee or Education Services Committee, but it's a bit clunky. It seems to me that not being disrespectful, it seems to me that Audit and Risk Management Committee members also have a role, or also have that role when serving as service committee members as well. And we see this in risk as well. We're not seeing enough discussion about risk matters at service committees. And that is very much a role for a member of this committee when they're sitting on service committees. So we do need to find a mechanism, I think, to open up a channel of communication and for members of other service committees to understand the role of audit and risk and to look to audit and risk for advice and guidance and opinion on certain things. And that most obvious role there is if this committee develops a concern about something, then that should be going to the service committee. But at the moment, I don't have a mechanism for that. I don't see how we could do it.
Okay, well, we'll record that when we come to our recommendations. Councillor Geddes and then Councillor Dryburgh.
I'm grateful to you, Chair, for allowing me back in. With the greatest of respect to Kevin, I mean, part of the comments he made there, you know, would lead me to conclude that this committee has a somewhat anemic role. And I think, quite frankly, this, you know, the response is very helpful, not only professional but helpful, and that's exactly the type of discussion that this committee is going to have, in my opinion, to an increasing degree until we can get the role clarified. And I would have to say, with the greatest of respect, that you know, in theory, I have no quibble with the fact that you know, scrutiny and performance management, audit and risk management should be embedded, as it were, at the core of every service and corporate committee in this authority. But let's be realistic, it's not happening. And that's another, by and large, it's not happening. And that's another reason, as it were, for clarifying and redefining and refocusing the roles of those committees that are perhaps best suited to carry that out. It's an issue which obviously we'll further consider, Chair. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful also, firstly, to Kevin for his positive response. I'm grateful to you for allowing me back in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dryburgh.
Councillor Geddes covered what I was going to say.
Thank you. Can we move to the recommendations then, Mem? Oh, no, sorry. Sorry. I have 2 items still to go. Framework I, has anybody got any questions on Framework I? No? Framework I, Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, and it goes back to the point, and it's been well rehearsed today in terms of information. Framework I being the one that very much social work rely on information, the storing of information and so forth, and it's how that information is shared with the elected member in terms of their casework and the risk that is associated along with that. So in that respect, we've got to find whether Framework I is capable of doing the job in terms of the role of the elected member. So I think we need to focus on that.
Thank you. Okay, can we move on to the LEADER programme, please? Members' questions on LEADER? None? Okay, in that case, can we now move to the recommendations, please? So, members, sorry, Councillor Collins?
Sorry, Chair, just I felt it was appropriate to go through these 3 before raising this question, but I was somewhat uncomfortable with Kevin's summary of training aspects and practices within the council, and I would ask, it's highlighted across, in my opinion, the 3 appendices that we've just been through, that it seems somewhat haphazard the way that training takes place. Where are the checks and balances insofar as any training that's done is concerned, and does it simply fall to a line manager to sign off an individual on having been sufficiently trained and able to operate the system or operate within the environment that expectation has been placed on? I'd just like some clarity around that aspect. I'm very disconcerted by earlier comments.
Kevin, comment, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I apologise to the committee if I have disconcerted the member and perhaps other members too, based by some casual remarks. The council takes training seriously. It needs to equip its staff to be able to do their jobs. It has a responsibility to do that. As I say, I was characterising how the nature of training has shifted over the years, and I apologise if I gave the impression it was slapdash. The backup for this is personal development reviews. Every member of staff in the council has an annual personal development review, and as part of that, there's an assessment, and it's a dual party. There's the perspective of the manager and the perspective of the individual. And almost always, you know, the PDR comes down to, the focus of the PDR becomes, does the person have the right tools, equipment, and opportunity to do their job properly? And often that may involve additional training. So training is quite often an outcome from these PDRs. And they're very, very effective and very powerful because they focus on the person's job specification, what are the requirements of them. We do find people, we're lucky in this council because we find people not sticking absolutely to their job descriptions. We do find people do tend to do more, they'll self-develop, they'll take on additional responsibilities because it makes the job better, it makes them more confident about what they're doing. But in all of that, if their function is to do X or Y, they need to be adequately equipped to do that. And the PDR process is what gives us confidence that training needs, excuse me, are identified and provided to staff.
Thank you. Can we move to the recommendations now?
Just following on from that, people can get on to SharePoint as mentioned in here, and there's other areas where they can go on for personal training or updating themselves. Is there anything on the systems to identify these people to ensure that they've done this? It may be that they're asked to do it as part of their job. There's a refresher in there. If you do that, that'll be great. Is there any way we get checks and balances that we can be sure that they're doing these sorts of things?
Every employee must have a training record.
Yes, Chair, services are meant to keep training records. Some systems, particularly the newer modular type systems, the online training, actually they record who's undergone the thing, because, you know, it's like an online survey. You go on and you do the training module, and then often at the end of it, to reinforce the learning, there can be questions. So completion of that is often recorded, and that goes into the person's training record. In some cases, I'm aware that the council has required some of these things. They're compulsory. So particularly things around health and safety awareness, data protection awareness, these sorts of things, security awareness. So modules are developed, they're provided to services to use, and then they direct their staff to complete those modules. And they have an amount of time. They maybe have 6 or 8 weeks or something like that to complete them. And at the end of that, the manager gets a report to say who's done it, who's not done it, and they'll follow that up. So a lot of these, you know, modern training systems are very effective and much better at that kind of thing than we have in the past.
Okay, thank you. Now we definitely are moving to the recommendations now. Members are asked to note and comment on the internal audit report finalised, and we have got a number of comments. Could you read those out, please?
Chairman, I think what you particularly wish to see is a mechanism to allow communication between this committee and service committees, particularly if this committee has concerns it wants to raise with the service committee. I think that was particularly a point that you wanted to be emphasised in the minute.
Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, it's just on that point, I'm pleased that Claire has caught it, and it was a remark made by Kevin, which was helpful in terms of, and Claire has covered it, the connection between this committee and a service committee, recognising that we will sit on some service committee of one sort or another, and it's how we actually do that, where, you know, rather than being abstract, taking an example where if you take social work where it's on a £300,000+ overspend, and to come in and start to question and really scrutinise that, you can be seen as being quite adversarial as an individual. But I think, you know, in terms of the service committees, then we should be seeing what the risks are in terms of, just that as an example, in terms of trying to work within budget constraints, and the high risk that this can cover. So it's not down to an individual or individuals because they happen to serve in that committee. It should be flagged up in the report. It may be covered in item 8, Chair. I just wonder if we're going to, because reference has been made to it in the debate.
We will look at this under item 8, roles and remits, under item 8 of this particular committee. So we've moved to the recommendations. We've added that in. Members, are you happy with that? Okay, thank you. Now, members, Councillor Gilroy is going to take us through the next item on the agenda, which is the 6 months progress against the 2014-15 internal.
Good. Right, so we move on to item 6, and we're asked to note and comment on the progress made with these action plans. I'd just like to ask before I open it up, just the very first one on page 18, with regards to the clarification we sought to the correct employer rate for Amy, and I just wonder if you could explain what's going on there with regard to this and how it affects the PPP project board.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this audit picked up that there had been an agreement as part of the school's PPP contract between Amy and the council. Amy had obtained from the council an undertaking to cap the employer's contribution rate that they would have to make for employees who are in the local government pension scheme. So Amy became an admitted body, but were concerned about the potential exposure to them of employers' contributions. So they asked the council for a cap to that, and that was agreed, and it's actually in the school's PPP contract, in effect. Now, what's happened is, since that time, Amy have been written to and asked to make certain contributions, certain employer contributions, which they have paid to the council, and these have been credited to the pension fund. But unfortunately, for a period of time, not currently, I think Amy are paying an employer's rate of 18.1%, and but previously they were paying something like 20.1%, something like that. So they've overpaid under the terms of the agreement in the school's PPP contract. That was picked up by the audit we did, and so we asked for a correction. There's some sort of churn on this, should we say, in terms of, well, where does the responsibility for this sit? If Amy are capped an employer's contribution, who is it who's going to make up any difference? So the conclusion that's been come to is that it does fall to education. It can probably be funded out of the school's PPP sinking fund. It's a legitimate cost. And so the proposal is that the school's PPP project board are being asked to agree to that arrangement. I haven't checked to see, the meeting has recently been held, but I haven't checked to see what their conclusion was, but I would imagine they would agree it. And then the service involved has said there may be some other changes coming through as a result of a triennial review. So we would like to advise Amy appropriately when we get those changes through as well. So we've got a somewhat longer extension on it than we might otherwise have wished. But April 15, this should be done and dusted and put away. And that gives them enough time. We could have asked for an earlier time, but it was possible we'd have to come back to you and ask for a further extension again. So in the end, I thought it was better to put a realistic date in as an extension date.
Okay, just with regards to the extension dates, there's one or two that are going on to one on page 21, number 3, which is going to February from July this year to February next year. And then page 22, we're going from August of this year to April next year, and 2 of those. Can you reassure us that those target dates will be met for those ones? Because that's quite a long extension, if you like.
Very much so, Vice Chair. This takes us back to the committee's almost, if you like, risk appetite on this. We have previously agreed that I can agree a 3-month extension, and that the committee would be interested in anything beyond that. These breach that, and I apologise to the committee for that. I think it's right that you're drawing attention specifically to these extensions. They follow discussion with the service. I mean, part of my problem is I would rather the thing was fixed and sorted out, and if I need to give them a bit longer time to obtain that undertaking, I would rather that happen than I give them a deadline and force them to break it again. If you see what I mean. So in particular, the payroll one does involve some work. The service has explained what it's doing and why it's doing it, why it needs that extension. And again, I'm convinced that the team there will do this. They just need adequate time to do it. So these extensions, Chair, whilst they're out with the boundaries of the terms of reference that we agreed previously, I do think they're appropriate, and I am confident that in giving them these extensions, we will see these improvements delivered.
Got Councillor Bell and okay, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Obviously, income control at ISPOL, you've got quite a lengthy appendix, 2 appendixes about cash sales and various accounts raised. And what I've got concerns is item 3, Mr McGarrick, is the cash handling procedures will be updated in the voice and over and unders procedures will be added. Well, these actually should be in place at the moment, not on the 14th of April. They need to be in place at the moment. I've also got concerns, there's nothing in the report here about regarding the vending machines. Obviously, you've got various checks about the safe and various other stringent checks, there's nothing about vending machines. There's cash to be delivered there. Who's responsible for that? Is that DG First, or is that another body outside Ice Bowl coming to deal with that? These should be noted in here as well for members to see.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this was about controlling income at the Ice Bowl. It was a report that was produced January of this year. In particular, the reference to item 3, cash handling procedures. It was due by April 14, and we reported that I should have pointed it out. The stuff in grey, you'll see there's now comments under the notes column for most entries. They're greyed out to give you a visual indicator that this is what's previously happened, and the stuff in dark text is current, if you like. So that was reported on the 22nd of April as having been complete. So the cash handling procedures have been updated, they're in place, and everything's fine on that. And as I say, the reference there is really to indicate to you that that has been done previously. On vending machines, yes, we didn't look at vending machines as part of this particular audit, but we have previously looked at vending machines. I know the councillor is well experienced in connection with vending machines and the challenges that operating successfully and controlling appropriately vending machines, he's well aware of those. We've had separate discussions about that, but we didn't include it in this audit. We have on previous occasions, indeed at the councillor's request, we did a blitz at DG1 and we looked at, I think they had 8 or 9 different vending machines in operation. So we sent the whole team over and did a spot check cash count there, which proved that there were some operational issues, but no concerns in connection with actually recovery of money through those systems. They are challenging. I think the council is correct to keep a focus on vending machine operations, and I appreciate that, and I'll make sure that we always factor that in any audit we're doing in connection with income handling in the future.
Thanks, Chair. Just back on the vending machines, the way forward is to take the risk out of the council and take the risk off DG First and put it out to local procurement and tendership, and that would take the risks away from the council, and that would eliminate all the risks with cash sales.
Driver.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to come back to that one you mentioned earlier on page 21, where point 3 on audit reports and check and procedure will be reviewed based on risk assessment. And in the notes column it says achieving a balance is proving complex and further time has been requested. What does that mean? Because, I mean, achieving a balance is proving complex. Does that mean that they're relying on a couple of people who actually do the audits and the checks and they might be off? Does it mean that there's perhaps training ongoing, as has been mentioned earlier on, for people who actually do the balancing checks? I'm not quite sure about this one, Kevin, so can you give us an update or an understanding what you have on that?
It gets quite technical, Chair, so I'll try not to stray too far into it. What we have here is a manager who's very keen to achieve efficiency in this process. As you know, there was a merger between the old staffing sections and the old payroll section to create pay and employment services. So over a period of time, there's been an alignment of responsibilities and duties and techniques. But when we did this audit, what we found was that some of the operational practice was not what the manager was expecting. He had thought that the team had generally moved to a particular position and they hadn't. Our concern is actually of over-checking. What we're finding is that there are a considerable number of checks done, some of which replicate other checks. Staff involved, many of whom are very experienced for many years, are very reluctant to let go of those checks. And the systems at the moment don't support a very simple checking mechanism. So the staff are right to be cautious. The manager has an ambition to cut out that work and to use the system to create maximum efficiency in terms of what's required. And the system needs a little bit of development. So that's why it's complicated, because there's a number of factors sort of at work here. But as I say, I am absolutely confident. I mean, they refer to us, they come to us and ask us for advice. They discuss progress that they're making on it. I'm quite confident that they're committed to doing this, not least because they need to do it to get throughput. You know, we don't want to be in the situation again where payroll are overwhelmed with work and finding difficulties with it. So we need this to work very slickly. And that's connected with, we observe that there's over-checking going on at the moment.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Bottom of page 22, box 5, it says that other security options are also under consideration. can we be told what these are and what the likely implementation date of these would be? Thank you. But yeah, it's the right-hand column, Vice Chair. It says implemented. Users are requested to confirm quarterly that they are not sending documents direct to print. Other security options are also under consideration.
Yes, Chair. This is about trying to reduce the amount of printing that's done. The ideal here would be for social workers not to print anything out, and then you can't lose it, if you see what I mean. So it is about providing appropriate and adequate technology for them. You know, we've been opening up a line of discussion with them in terms of saying, look, in terms of records updates and these sorts of things, it would be so much better if when you're visiting a client, you have a laptop or a device with you which is fully secure, and you enter into that, the notes or discussion, whatever's required is being done at the time, and when you come back, that could be uploaded, and it doesn't all have to be re-input a second time or drafted out. So some of that would reduce the need for printing out documents and taking them to various places. But there are implications for that, training again, facilities, these sorts of things. So it's something that we're asking them to look at, and they're saying, yeah, we'll look at this in the medium term. They've met the objective that we asked them to do, which they've dealt with, so we can tick that recommendation off for now, but they are also open to other suggestions.
With your leave, Chair, and you know, you're saying in the medium term, I take it that timescale is acceptable to you?
I think so, Chair. I mean, this is the first time a data protection risk management audit has been done in social work services. It's proved very useful. It was identified as a corporate risk, a high corporate risk, and we're visiting all departments. It is likely, I think, to be done again at a future date. What we have is an incremental improvement. Council's awareness of certain issues is growing and improving, and we're beginning to see corporate solutions to certain problems emerging. So, you know, bringing our social work colleagues, giving them the tools to allow them to operate safely in data protection terms is on the agenda. It's a question of moving it forward. But as you know, they have a number of issues they're dealing with, so it has to fit in there with other priorities as well.
Can we go to the recommendation then, which is just note and comment on the progress made in implementing internal audit recommendations as detailed in the appendix, please? Thank you. Back to Councillor.
Thank you, members. We're now moving on to item 7, which I think I told you 5 minutes ago. But anyway, 6 months progress against the 2014-15 internal audit.
Thank you, Chair. At this stage, I'm advising you that we're more or less on plan. You can see the detail of it in the appendix. I'm not asking for any change to the plan at this juncture. I think we can deliver it. It is a challenging plan this year, particularly around the specific audits that this committee agreed we should try and carry out this year, but I will do my best. We'll be in a better position, I think, at the next monitoring report, if there are any wheels coming off anywhere, to highlight that to you. But as things stand, it's all under control, and we've been quite successful at getting through, if you like, I mean, it makes it sound none of our work is obligatory or only part of it. It's all of the same status, but we have certain commitments to deal with in the first half of the year, and we've largely discharged those. We're now moving on to the work that may be of more direct interest to the committee.
Members, Councillor Geddes.
Thanks, Chair. 2 questions with your leave, if I may. Paragraph 3.4 is the first one, ma'am. Talking about the criminal justice social work grant claim proved problematic in audit terms, but was signed off within the required timescale. I'd be interested to know just exactly, you know, what the problems were in relation to that, Chair. That's the first question. And the second one is in paragraph 3.7, when we're talking about we were asked to provide support on verifying certain tonnages under the waste management contract so that final figures can be agreed between the council and the operator. Will that be regarded, Chair, as a purely operational issue? Or if it's not, you know, which forum, decision-making forum, will it be referred to, as it were, for approval or discussion or consideration? Thank you, Chair.
Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in respect of 3.4, the criminal justice social work grant was a stinker to audit. unfortunately. Yeah, I did it, I was involved in it, and unfortunately I have to contain myself sometimes. I think I ask too many questions and drill into things a bit too deep. So I was not satisfied in certain respects, and it became very frustrating. You know, even obtaining an official position on what grant had been awarded to the council took many, many weeks. It was extremely annoying, to say the least. So I did gimlet it, rather, I have to admit that. I was extremely thorough, and it was a bit wobbly, but we did, you know, we got it signed off in time. In effect, we're acting as an agent for external audit. So we have to be satisfied, and then we have to satisfy external audit. So it's a sort of two-handed process. But the challenges that emerged from it, we are dealing with. I've written a memo to the service involved and said, this is what I require next year. This is what I want to have ready. You have to present for audit this information next year, and that will cut down the amount of time we have to spend doing it significantly. In respect of the tonnages, yes, it's not at this stage my intention to produce a report which would come to this committee on this matter. This is a matter connected with a contract between the council and Project Co, also known as Shanks, in respect of the waste PFI. What happens is, in regards to landfill tax, the council makes an advance payment. It sits down with Shanks, works out what it thinks is going to go to landfill in any particular year, and it makes an advance payment monthly. And at the end of the year, there's a reconciliation and an accounting for the actual tonnages that went to landfill. And there were some problems with that process because of certain operational issues in connection with Shanks during the years in question. That's 12-13 and 13-14. So we have been discussing with Shanks, asking for evidence to support their representations to the council. We've been taking advice from the council as to their perspective on it, but we're actually quite close, I think, to being able to recommend to P&E what tonnages we think they should agree in connection with ultimately landfill tax payment that has been agreed to have been made.
Councillor Geddes, would you
Thanks,
like to
Chair.
comment?
Yeah, I'm extremely grateful for the responses, and particularly pleased to hear Kevin say that in relation to the first question, that there's been a briefing note, for want of a better term, on lessons learned, and hopefully it will be much more straightforward for next year. That's what it's all about, after all.
Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, I'm looking at Kevin's appendix here, and I'm looking at the ones where we've set aside so many days in the programme, Kevin. Under the departmental financial systems, we've set about 235 in the year and delivered on 2 of those days. And similar to risk management, which we've spent a lot of time on today, I'm looking at performance management, where we've set aside 30 and undelivered in that one. At least we've reached 52 of the 130, but in terms of performance management, you've been unable to, on the table we've got, to do any days or concentrate any days to performance management. I say this in terms of the EMIS, the elected members' electronic systems, where we've got the 3 in the 3 days and then the 15 days response time, and beyond that, no measurement per se. And I believe that Lagan is going to be implemented or introduced and launched on the 3rd of November. It's really, you know, this idea of performance management to some of the issues, and indeed members actually looking at whether there should be a complaints procedure for the members in terms of the performance management. So I'm trying to square the circle here in terms of it's an issue or it's not, and we did set aside some 30 days to look at it, and yet we've delivered on none. Is there a reason?
Yes, Chair. Apologies to labour the point. The plan is an uneven pudding, you know, and you don't have a go at it, everything at once. So basically, the message, particularly in connection with departmental financial systems, is that that's the block of work that members selected largely, and I haven't made a start on that yet. And that's what we're going to do in the second half of the year. For the first half of the year, we were concentrating on the work that's required to be done to support external audit on the grant claims and the main financial systems work, which is the priority work, or at least from the external perspective, that is the priority work for internal audit to deliver on. So it's basically a question of occurrence. We're going to pick up that work in the second half. So yeah, we haven't touched the performance management audit yet, and we haven't touched a lot of the departmental financial systems work yet. On risk management, what we're finding this year is that more time has gone into the risk management support element, which I had cut significantly. Previously, it's been in the order of 150 days. So this year, I cut it down to 50 days, and I was putting emphasis elsewhere. And we've got 2 risk management audits, but they are coming in well below budget. So across the piece, I think risk management will balance out, although the individual lines within that block are not going to come out right against the original budget. But the total should be roughly within that sort of scale of resource. So that's the explanation.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Chair. Just a point that Councillor Scobie raised, obviously about EMS and complaints procedure. I thought they were actually looking into a complaints procedure for elected members. Obviously, when EMS comes to an end, the elected member is not satisfied with the answer and the way the answer has been conducted. This is, as far as I'm concerned, elected members are acting on behalf of the constituents, and I think it's quite very, very important, and it's risk to the council if these things are not followed up properly. So I think the way forward, I think I mentioned many months ago at this audit committee, along with Councillor Scobie, a complaints committee needs to be set up for elected members to take any cases forward that they feel that are not getting satisfactory answers through EMS. They do have it in other services in Scotland and whatnot, a complaints procedure. NHS does it. As my father went through an operation where he made a complaint to the NHS. So there is a complaints procedure to go forward. I feel we need some robust mechanism to be taken in place so that these complaints can be taken forward in an appropriate manner.
Councillor Bell, I'm going to ask Mr Crichton to answer that question because I understand there is something in the process.
Thank you, Chairman. This issue was indeed raised by members just before the summer recess, and I'm shortly to send to group leaders in the first instance the review document that's been undertaken, and that sets out just exactly what the process currently is for members to raise concerns within the Council, but it also emphasises the distinction between concerns you may wish to raise as an elected member as opposed to the concerns that have been raised by members of the public, and we appreciate there's quite clearly 2 different facets to that. So happy to be in a position to say that's going to group leaders initially, and in due course I've envisaged that would form part of our updated member and officer protocol. So I'm sure that's something you'll be discussing within your groups in the very near future. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Members, can we move to the recommendations? Okay, we're happy to note. And have we got any comments?
Well, I think any appropriate comments will be reflected in a minute.
Okay. Thank you, members. Can we now move on to item 8 on the agenda? This item is to do with the revised guidance for local authority audit committees. Kevin, I know that you sent to all members the SIPFA position statement and the new guidance. Could you possibly, just for the point of this committee, just give us a brief outline on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I hope you've all had a chance to look at the document. I think, it is an updated set of guidance, but the reality is I think you should look at this document as a standalone document and not worry about what has happened previously or what adjustments have occurred and so on, and look at the document in terms of saying, well, this is the standard to which audit committees are expected to operate. And it's in 2 bits. The first bit, if you like, is the position statement, and there's a bit of bureaucracy involved in this, but the position statement is SIPFA's official pronouncement as to its opinion as to how audit committees should operate. And it's a page and a bit, I think, or 2 pages, and it's a very helpful document to have as a reference. The guidance document, which is the fuller document, provides commentary and some opinion on SIPFA's part on its position statement, but it also provides resources for audit committees to use. And that's important to understand, is this is a resource pack. The stuff at the back of it, the appendices, are very valuable to you as a committee. And one of the recommendations of this report is that you use 2 of the appendices at the back of this. You agree that these be used to carry out an assessment of the committee's adherence to good practice, compliance as it's called, and also effectiveness. Now, are we achieving the sorts of characteristics of an audit committee that we should be. So the committee is full, the document has got some opinions in it, but some interesting opinions on it. My take on it is that it is saying that the audit committee is a very important advisory body to the council. You are charged with reporting to those responsible for governance. And in a council context, the people responsible for governance are members sitting as the council. So you have a job of work to do. And as we've referred to previously, the mechanism for you to report and for the council to obtain your opinion or receive your opinion, it doesn't appear to be there just at the minute. We'll have to have a look at that and see what we can do on it. I mean, I think there are some, interesting things in it. The guidance talks about providing an opportunity and a resource to focus on governance, risk management, and strong financial controls. We've got overlap on all of those almost immediately. The committee understands and knows that it is not responsible for risk management. It's responsible for, if you like, assuring that risk management processes are effective. In the earlier report, that's a specific question we ask you to agree to as part of the corporate risk register, that you agree that the thing we've got in place for dealing with the corporate risk register contributes to assurance that risk management is appropriately dealt with. On governance, this committee is not responsible for governance. Policy and Resources Committee are responsible for governance. But again, that's probably appropriate in the sense of if you had governance as the responsibility, you would have to do governance. And that's different from, if you like, observing on governance. So I think, thinking about it, to me, that it seemed to be okay. And strong financial controls. And again, you are not responsible for financial monitoring or anything to do with that. That's dealt with by another committee. So it's complex. This is quite a complex world, I think, you're being asked to operate in. And you need to find a role, and you need to find a way of communicating to members of other committees and of the council as a whole. So it's an interesting document, and I think it really does provide some challenges for you. I quoted something in the report about the nature of the committee. Where have I put that? I said, paragraph 313. In the chapter on independence and accountability, the guidance states the committee's effectiveness does not depend on delegation of powers. So it's not a matter of you acquiring the turf or the responsibility to do things. And they also note the impact of the committee is through influence and persuasion rather than direct decision making. And to me, that's the key to success for this committee, is to obtain the respect of council as a whole, to be the go-to committee for certain matters and certain issues, particularly around risk. But that doesn't mean that everybody else abdicates responsibility for risk and just leaves it to you to deal with. They also have a responsibility for risk. So it seems to me it's a very valuable and useful document while presenting some challenges in how we're going to take it forward and make sure that we become a very, very good, effective audit committee. In headline terms, we are delivering most of the requirements, the core functions of an audit committee as matters stand. Internal audit comes to you, reports its reports to you, reports progress monitoring. External audit brings its reports to you as well. You do see the corporate risk register. The governance statement last year, which is a key document, it's a public document, it becomes a publication of the council. That's a key method for communication. That came to this committee as a draft last year for your comments on it, and it was, I think, finally reported to Policy and Resources before being put in the accounts. So that mechanism, to me, seems to be a good one if you capitalise on that in terms of you being the advisory committee that provides commentary or notes concern or communicates concern to other committees. And, reporting in at that level it will work quite well. You have got a job. I mean, the guidance suggests or implies that you should be reporting, both you should be analysing your effectiveness annually, and you should also be reporting on your work annually. As I say, I'm not sure what mechanism we've got for that, but, imagine an annual report from the Audit and Risk Management Committee going forward to full council and council considering that. That's the kind of model that SIPA have in mind. I'm happy to take.
Thank you. Now, members, we've already discussed a number of issues that have arisen already this morning in the roles and remits of this audit committee. And I think this is our opportunity to have a further discussion surrounding where we want to see the committee going. I've got Councillor Driver and then Councillor Geddes.
Thanks very much, Chair. And yeah, the discussions that we had earlier on have raised a few issues that perhaps we can take forward as part of this report. And I'm looking at, certainly in the recommendations at 2.5, is how we consider how the committee should meet the requirement to report on its work and its performance. And I think the issue for me is, normally when we send to other committees, it's a request to have a look at certain things that we have raised as an issue or a risk to the council. We haven't really reported back to, for instance, full council on the work that we've actually done. And I think that is appropriate that we do perhaps have a report to full council as the Audit and Risk Committee, looking at the decisions that we've actually made, and then perhaps as part of that process, what the service committees have actually done on those recommendations from the Audit and Risk Committee. Because in some respects, we can say to that committee, we would like you to have a look at this particular issue, but then they might say, well, I'm not going to bother. And that may be an issue where we are trying to raise a risk on behalf of the council as an Audit and Risk Committee. However, that particular service committee has said that it's not a risk as far as we're concerned. And we need to have that discussion, I think, between the service committees as to why we think it's a risk to the council and why they don't think it is either. So there's that potential report for full committee. When you talk about recommendation 2.3 is recommend to the ad hoc subcommittee review schemes, we do have in the front of every report the delegations for each of the committee. And I think it may be, there's a potential there when we go there to enhance those particular delegations. So that's two areas where I'd like to see improvement, Chair, and perhaps that would go a long way to looking at the local authority audit committees and where we can improve the situation.
Thank you. I do think we have some issues that we need to address today. I don't know whether or not we can make some recommendations today to the ad hoc subcommittee, and maybe then for our committee to have a further discussion surrounding about the way forward, because there are some changes. We do need to take ownership as a committee. Ultimately, that needs to be fed in some shape or form to Policy and Resources Committee, I think. But we currently don't have a mechanism for doing that, so I think it's important that we actually devise a mechanism for doing that. However, Councillor Geddes?
Well, I would agree entirely with you, and even more so the comments that Archie's just made, Chair. I think at the end of the day, going back to Kevin's comments on paragraph 3.13, the impact of the committee is through influence and persuasion rather than direct decision making. Well, I know that that's a call from the SITFA report, but forgive me, that's just a wee bit biased. And you know, to go back to what Archie said, well, what happens if the service committee says, well, no, we note your recommendation, but we're not prepared, as it were, to do anything particular about it. You know, who's thereupon going to hod the jackets, if I can use a colloquialism? Is it going to be Policy and Resources, or is it going to be full council? Now, I think it was Goethe that once said, always distrust those in whom the urge to punish is strong. So I don't want to fall into that particular category for obvious reasons. But at the end of the day, I think that there's got to be a mechanism in place which, heaven forbid, you know, if we need some form of sanctions, you know, it's available as an option. And again, Chair, you know, going back to the issue of process, you know, I wouldn't want under any circumstances to miss the boat in relation to recommendations 2.22 and 2.3. But what I would like to see, as I've already indicated, I think in probably two items earlier on this morning, is a really, you know, a meaningful attempt by this committee to sharpen up its remit, its role, and its focus, albeit, you know, consistent with its relationship with the other decision-making forums in the council. And I think that, you know, what we were hearing this morning from Kevin and his professional response to the points we're raising, to me, shows that there is a there's room, as it were, for meaningful debate and hopefully worthwhile outcomes on the back of that. So, as I say, I have no problems with raising these two recommendations, or these two recommendations this morning, but I would like to think that we would flag up to either the ad hoc subcommittee or P&R committee or whoever, look, we feel that there's a much more radical issue which has got to be dealt with here, and we are champing at the bit to get on and do this. Not only from the basis of arrogation of powers to ourselves or self-aggrandisement, but on the basis of making this committee a better committee and thereby conferring added value on the council. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, we have rehearsed, I think, the whole issue, item 8 through items 4 and 5. And in 4, I think what we were asking for was more information, further block, or whatever you want to call it, in reporting on what indeed's being reported to the corporate management, so that we can see, we can scrutinise and monitor the development, and we've got to find a mechanism for that, as is contained in item 8. Similarly, the connection between this committee and other service committees, and I think Alistair referred to this committee perhaps being a bit anemic if we don't get it right. Anemic. If I was given the impression there it was the individuals, and that wasn't the case. Yeah, I'm grateful for that correction there. But we can find ourselves quite impetus in terms if we haven't got the right mechanism. Because when we look at some of the issues that Kevin, we've talked about operational issues, and that still lies. But we must have a function where we are able to scrutinise some of these operational issues in terms of whether we're getting it right in terms of performance management. And then Kevin went on to say about governance lying with CCS, yet when you look at this document under item 5 or SITFA's guidance, act as the principal non-executive advisor function supporting those charged with governance. And in that sense, we've never had in this council an adversarial role similar to a select committee in some of the parliaments, although we did move towards a similar in scrutiny at one time where we had officers come before the scrutiny committee. So I think we've got to get it right. But it moves on to be able to meet privately and separately with the external auditor and with head of internal auditors. And I think that we've got a function as an auditor, looking at the other issues on the page below. The core functions of an audit committee are to, and there's one there that refers to value for money. And I know myself and another councillor has actually put in a complaint to Audit Scotland on a value for money. And we've met with Kevin on it. But it would be great to think that there was an adversarial role for this committee to actually examine some of the issues that are going through council, so that we can look and see whether indeed there is a value for money, and how we actually call in certain issues where we are dissatisfied with some of the issues that are going through the service committees and full council. Because Archie referred there, we should be able to put back to a service committee on a particular specific issue, yet that committee is right, no, we're not going to look at that. And we have no mechanism to control that. So I think we've got to look very closely at what SITF are putting out as their guiding principles and how we adopt so that we can be more effective as an audit committee in looking at some of these issues. And there are some points in here that I think we should be adopting. And maybe the first issue is whether we take on the role as an adversarial role, so that we're able to question officers of the council on the issues that are going through committees and full council.
Members? No further comments? Councillor Collins?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, we seem to be skirting round about the question of the existence at the same time of scrutiny and performance. And I would welcome any comment from Mr. Crichton regarding the role of audit and risk as it's been projected in our discussions here today, and whether or not the scrutiny and performance role doesn't fall under the same heading, and therefore one remit would cover both, so there would be one committee covering those responsibilities rather than two.
Crichton?
Thank you, Chairman. Just firstly, to say the guidance, I think it's fairly clear that there's a clear distinction in the need for having an audit committee, and that's quite separate from a scrutiny and performance committee. However, I think what we have been very clear about in the discussions this morning and the presentation from the Chief Internal Auditor is that we're all minded to accept that where we are now is where we are. There's an opportunity on the back of the guidance before us to take a number of steps forward. What the recommendations are intended to do is to firstly get a feel today from the committee in terms of the extent to which you want to make recommendations to the ad hoc sub to make a change to the scheme of delegation. I think the mood of the committee would suggest that, for example, in relation to the annual governance statement, rather than it coming here at the point that it's finalised, I think the sense of the room would be that at the stage when it's being developed, this committee has an advisory role, potentially through, for example, a member seminar, that you have far more involvement in that statement, because that statement, in effect, is reflecting how well has the council performed in terms of good governance, risk management and financial management. So we're clearly getting an indication from you that in making that recommendation to ad hoc sub, that would be something that you would want to be given a more specific role and remit in, and therefore acknowledge that obviously, yes, Policy and Resources Committee ultimately have the doing role, as Kevin referred to it, but the advisory shaping that statement is certainly very much something that could be taken on by this committee. So I think there's a clear message from members today, Chairman, that we're more than happy to develop into a report that's going to audit the ad hoc sub. I think it's in a fortnight's time, that subcommittee. It could well be, if you wished, for example, the chairman could come along and with the approval of the ad hoc sub chair could maybe present the views of this committee, and in due course, therefore, that report would form a final report to full council with the specific proposed changes to things like scheme of delegation, capturing the enhanced role of this committee, being mindful of the guidance and the comments from members this morning. Thank you, Chairman.
Members? Are you happy to move to the recommendations?
Yep.
Okay. 2.1?
Noted.
Noted. 2.2?
Agreed.
Agreed, members, yes? Yep. 2.3?
Agreed.
2.4?
Agreed.
And 2.5?
Sorry, Chairman, just to indicate, I think the sense that I got was that a specific activity could be the preparation of an annual report from this committee, and that's certainly something that I'm sure could either be a standalone document or could in fact form part of the annual governance statement. But the intention is for a report, the final process for that, something we can discuss. Thank you, Chairman.
I do think it's important that we do address this situation now. We have an opportunity to do it as a committee, and I think it's necessary that we do. And I also think it's necessary that we send a message out that other service committees can refer things to audit and risk the same way as they do to scrutiny, but we've never, in the time that I've sat in this committee, had a referral from anywhere else. And I think it's important that they understand that that is an option open to them. The same way as I would like to be able to send something back to service committee if this committee determined that they felt it was an issue. Councillor Geddes?
I would like to think, so, Chair, that we would have, in fact, an input statement to make, for want of a better term, in relation to the wider governance report. Apart from anything else, it would surely encourage any doubters to believe that this is part of our locus, this is part of our role. But I also feel, in fact, that we should be flagging up and putting in place arrangements whereby we review our function, our role, and remit, as I say, in the way that we operate, the way sometimes we don't operate, without being disrespectful in relation to the wider council as a whole and to the other decision-making forums of the authority. I do not, under any circumstances, Chair, let me repeat, I don't wish to be accused of trying to arrogate powers to this committee, anything but I think there is the capability of developing a role to add value and enhance the overall work of the council as a consequence. And I think if we accept that principle, we should be looking at the best ways of pursuing that.
Thank you. Can I just ask then on that point, before as chair of this committee, I have to give a report on what we as a committee feel is the best way forward. Do you think therefore it would be advisable for this committee to meet? Because there's no point, everybody needs to, in this committee, needs to be in agreement as to what we put forward. And it's not one individual's view, it's the committee. And I think if that means that we need to have a special time for a discussion, then I'm happy. Member?
Agreed, Chair. Never had you down, Chair, for being collegiate before.
I'll not comment on that. Okay, so we've agreed all the recommendations. Do you want to make any further comments to make sure that we've got everything?
I was just to emphasise at 2.5 about the annual performance report as part of the, either on its own or part of a governance statement, and the point made by Councillor Geddes, just emphasised by all members about looking at the role, remit and function of the Audit and Risk Committee in relation to the Service Committee and the full Council, and indeed the Scrutiny and Performance Committee.
Members, just before we move on from here, I think the ad hoc subcommittee is about 2 weeks' time.
Scheduled for 13.
Okay, well in that case, members, if we have to put forward a report at that committee that I'm speaking to, then we need to have a meeting between now and then, or a seminar between now and then, where as a committee we can discuss what we want to see in that report. So time scales of the essence. Members, so you're happy if maybe we do a week on Monday or something like that? So Monday, most councillors are probably here at some stage on the Monday.
I can check the diaries and need to reschedule the ad hoc to incorporate a seminar before it. Look at that.
Yeah, I think it's important that we actually know where we're coming from and that we have time to decide what we put forward. So if we come back to with possible dates, thank you. I have no further business, so thank you very much for your time.